Location: the Blombos near Cape Town. Time: 77,000 years ago. Our ancestors scratched symbols in stone and bits of ochre. Prehistoric information. Its significance has yet to be unraveled. 27,000 years ago, our forebears paint animal pictures on a wall. These wall paintings were discovered only recently in the village of Villeneuve in the south of France. 15,000 years ago, the caves near Lascaux. Hunting scenes unfold as if it was an antique cartoon. We get a glimpse of the way our early ancestors lived. 5,000 years ago, information is printed on papyrus, the precursor of paper. We have to thank this revolutionary development for the fact that we now have access not only to plays written by Menander and the Gospel according to Thomas, but also to antique shopping lists. 550 years ago, information is mass-produced and distributed for the first time when books are printed. And then, Saint-Loup de Varan, a landscape dating back 180 years. Joseph Nietzsche takes the first ever photograph in the history of mankind. He exposes light-sensitive material to a very bright and sunny day. The camera lens is left open for no less than 8 hours. The result? A French landscape seen through a window near Saint-Loup de Varan. The date? Wednesday the 2nd, May 1816. Today we approach things differently. Taking into account the new digital calendar, we are now somewhere around the year 40. We do, however, have a legacy based on centuries of information production. Archives overflowing. Museum depots are full to the brim, and thousands of miles of analogue archives are nearing their use-by date. Now that we have crossed the threshold into the digital era, we have access to tools that will enable us to permanently preserve and safeguard for the future information passed down through many generations. However, once we start this process, we need to be able to do it properly. We need to store everything in such a way that it is easily retrievable again. It is extremely difficult to get a realistic idea of how much information has been handed down. Just think of the number of newspapers that have been published almost every day for the past 40 years. An almost incomprehensible number of historic records. How can we convert this to digital format within a reasonable period of time? How do we process all these historic paper facts into a digital reproduction without spending a lifetime doing so? Today we talk about terabytes, otherwise known as 1,000 gigabytes. Just to put this into perspective, 1 gigabyte will store 50 bookshelves full of novels. The Library of Alexandria was once the largest library in the world. Copies of all the original books of the Greek tragedy writers were produced in Athens. At that time, books were the main data carriers. They were of such significance that trade convoys passing through the city were obliged to hand over as yet unknown documents to be copied for the library. Because of the thirst for new ideas prevalent at the time, the latter is thought to have contained 7,000 book scrolls in 100 BC. This would have resulted in a petabyte of information today. A 2-kilometer high tower of data CD-ROMs. Time is of the essence. The problem is that speed tends to go hand in hand with inaccuracy. How do we develop systems that not only preserve information correctly, but quickly and safely without adverse consequences? And in such a way that the results are immediately accessible. When handling unique and often vulnerable material, whether it is ceramics, historic atlases, paintings or stamp collections, the original needs to be treated with the utmost care and kept in a controlled environment, also before and after the conservation process. The entire logistics process needs to be geared to the special nature of the objects. Items that are normally stored in motionless and secure conditions in a controlled and therefore ideal environment in vaults and archives suddenly need to be touched, packed, moved and transported, all within a specific time scale. In this case, technique does not suffice. This requires a skilled and duly considered workflow. Because this process is based on an inherent contradiction, working quickly with large quantities but with the utmost accuracy, it requires special attention. After all, in spite of its almost indistinguishable digital copies, the original remains of inestimable value. The best preserved text document on the planet is probably Leonardo da Vinci's Codex, 18 sheets of parchment written backwards. The only remaining original manuscript by the man who is generally considered to be the genius of all times. Bill Gates bought the 18 sheets of parchment for more than $30 million. In spite of the excellent copies that are available, loss or damage of the codex would be incalculable. The same applies to many other originals. At an emotional level, they could not be replaced, not even by a perfect replica. The in-house design of databases, or in analog speak, clever electronic storage cupboards, combined with digital preservation techniques, is a very powerful tool. Once you know how an item has been preserved and you then store it in a specific way, the software can be adapted to ensure that the objects in the storage system are accessible to users in a way that suits them. For instance, an inhabitant of some random village or neighborhood or street could use his PC to access a provincial image database containing old photographs of his area. To check whether the image might include his ancestors, he will also be able to zoom in. Once you have found the text or image you are looking for, you will be looking at a copy. It is important, therefore, that it is a faithful reproduction. A print by Johannes Zanderdam, dating back to 1602, is a typical example. Those who know the picture know that it is an etching depicting the sea in the foreground to the left, and the dunes and a large crowd of people to the right. Count Ernst Casimir, who has turned up to watch the event, can be seen in the foreground. Those looking at a high-quality on-screen or printed copy will see exactly the same as in the original, including the irregularities in the paper of the original, an exact replica of the original in the depot. In fact, originals are not always precious just because they are unique. Sometimes they are actually breakable. In that case, the items cannot be transported to the studio. The studio has to go on site. In this case, to Leerdam, where glass implements have been produced since 1765. Initially just bottles, but soon the range also included bowls and tableware. Royal Leerdam has built up a worldwide reputation in the design and production of glass utensils. Its current exceptional collection is the result of the emphasis placed on an aesthetic assortment at the beginning of the last century. Many designers and artists were involved in this process, including the legendary Andries Kopier, who designed stunning table and glassware for Royal Leerdam for many years. The West Fries Museum in Hoorn is located in a prominent monumental building which dates back to 1632. A museum was opened in this building on 10th of January 1880. The museum now houses an extensive collection of silver decorative objects and utensils, porcelain and paintings, including a number of impressive images of militia companies. This famous Dutch genre gained a reputation throughout the world because of one particularly well-known example, Rembrandt's The Night Watch. Hoorn houses some splendid examples of this genre. They are in fact rather stately group photographs of social clubs. Whereas during the Middle Ages, the militia companies were meant to support the town council in times of strife, in the 17th century they consisted of beautifully attired and well-to-do gentlemen who used to convene at set times to engage in congenial and useful activities. A kind of Lions Club of the Golden Age. All this splendour is currently on display in the museum, but soon it will be also available at home once the collection has been photographed and archived in digital format. In fact, the copies could be framed and displayed as it were in the same giant format. No one would notice the difference, not even those with malicious intentions fixed on stealing them. Of course, they would be a bit on the large side to just put under your arm and walk away with. Conservation of historic material, information relating to objects of art and collections, retrieving and using them in a new context is not based on static one-way traffic. The process creates a new fascinating layered reality based on the use of digital technology and custom-built databases and search software. It is certainly not unusual to talk about digital archaeology. Digging has turned into surfing, and leafing through pages into browsing. But the sensation associated with tracking down something you suspect is there remains the same. We owe a debt of gratitude to our ancestors for the extraordinary legacy they left behind. From the Blombos in South Africa to the caves in Lascaux, and far beyond. Soon history will be revealed again in a single major context, and history is no longer the sole domain of scientists and laymen with a particular interest. From now on, everyone will be able to get acquainted with it.